All right. Well, welcome. Today I'm here with Hiren Soni, who's a candidate that I worked with over the last couple of years, who is one of the most entertaining guys I know, like such a vibrant personality. And one of my favorite candidates to have worked with because he had some significant challenges that were part of his candidacy. And he had such a go-get-em attitude, do whatever it takes. Let's make sure we get into a great school. He ultimately got into a number of different programs, really loved Tepper, which was one of his top choices. And so that's where he is now, just starting his first year. And so Kieran, really great to have you here today. Thank you so much again for doing this.
Thank you very much, Ryan, and thanks for the great introduction. That was fun. It was fun working with you, and it was a really fun journey.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'll start by allowing you to just tell us a little bit more about you and your background and maybe some of the work that you did leading into business school.
Okay, so I'm basically a civil engineer, studied at Carnegie University in Canada, and I moved to Canada from India for my undergrad. So it was a big move. And after my undergrad studies, where I did pretty good enough, I would say, I had a job and whatnot. I moved to I worked in oil and gas sector in Canada, which is very remote, cold. It's fun in a different way. So after spending 10 years in oil and gas sector, I realized that industry is changing quite a bit, and I need something solid background like in business sector to bring the change that I was looking for in my career. But to add, I spent 10 years in workforce. I was already older candidate, so I already had a lot of questions how I fit in MBA candidacy. And even the background, like civil engineering or oil and gas industry, is not really well represented in MBA schools. So there were a few inhibitions before I came to school, but that was in general, as an older candidate, Indian, male, engineer, I had a lot of questions.
Yeah. I mean, so your candidacy definitely had some hurdles. Like you said, you had like a 6.9 is where you landed ultimately on the GMAT, but you had a lower GPA. You were an engineering male Indian candidate, which is obviously very common in the MBA demographic field. And then you're older than the traditional candidate by a significant amount. You were applying when you were 37, 38 years old. So how did you overcome all that stuff? You had some great things too, but how were you able to earn admission to business school given these obstacles?
The basic thing I would say, don't give up. Yes, some schools came up front and said, we would only consider you for executive education, and those schools were practically out of my application list to begin with. Some schools even did it afterward, they offered me executive education, admission into that program. But what I wanted to get from the school is to learn from others. This program is not about schoolwork, some coursework, and a few classes or few networking. Yes, what I would say, networking sessions. But it is more about spending time with other equally and driven people, equally talented and driven people. So that's something I wanted out of this. Out of the school, and that's something I conveyed as much as possible through my essays, through my communication with the schools. And yes, it is important to communicate with schools even before application when you have this many hurdles to cross. So yeah. I think that's something that
I'm sure. So were you ever asked in an interview about being ready for business school, or you at an older age?
Not directly, but a lot of time I was asked, why MBA and why now? That's a very simple question. But I did have to explain, because it was always an underlying thing, right? I had to remove that doubt in the person who was interviewing me, whether they asked me explicitly or not.
Yeah. So how did you do that? What was your response to that question?
I refer to a few things. I always thought, I had a good story why I was older candidate. When I was in India, in my 12th grade, the results were totally unexpected from my all previous performances. So I totally took a unconventional path of working in India and then moved to Canada to pursue my undergrad. And even there, I had to pay back my parents and whatnot. But anyway, so I had a good story to justify it.
Yeah.
But justification alone is not enough. Even after all these hurdles, you're still committed to work hard and to do what it takes to be in the school. I think conveying these both of these parts are really the thing that I think got me passed through, like got me through that.
Yeah. Did you ever attempt to make the argument that, hey, I'm older than the average applicant, but that gives me more experience, and that's actually a good thing? Did you ever market it that way?
Certainly, it does. Like it's you bring like such a calmness, wealth of experience. Uh, like even in your own settings, like when you look around, like you have more calm demeanor, more poised texture, like gestures when you're speaking even in interview. I think that's something really shows up. Like if
Yeah.
you're older, it shows up.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think you're talking a lot about just kind of owning your story. Like you had some personal circumstances that did postpone things in your career. And so you owned that and you didn't apologize for it. You just said, this is who I am and this is where I've been.
Yeah, and you really bring up a good point, Ryan. Like owning up, like whatever it is, failure or success, own up to it. Like say that you learn what you learned out of it and what you can make it. What would you do it to make it better? I think that's something is shows the coachability, and that's something schools are looking for.
Yeah. I mean, it's a challenge, I think, for every applicant to kind of balance I have traditional background and experience versus I don't. So you kind of had a couple of different challenges, right? Because you were a civil engineering background. You came from a civil engineering background, which is a very common background for male Indian applicants.
Yes.
But then you worked in this different industry, like you worked in oil and gas, which is pretty underrepresented. So how did you kind of manage that, right? Did you kind of run away from your engineering background because it was so common, or did you embrace it as part of your story? And how did you use the oil and gas experience to differentiate you?
I would say it a little bit helped that current upheaval in the industry that it is going through. Energy sector is changing, right? With renewables, with a lot of people not liking oil and gas or traditional way of extracting oil. So industry is going through a lot of changes. So it really helped me in a sense, but at the same time, like I had to bring up like how the industry is changing and how I'm going to be part of that change.
Mm.
So what I did is like, yes, I have solid experience in engineering and operations side of this field. At the same time, I want to broaden it up even more so that I can take up those future challenges and be ready for that. So that was my positioning, and that's why I look for energy consulting as a target sector. What it gives me is a consulting sector within energy realm gives me a broader experience, like a broader because what I did so far was Canadian oil sands, focused on oil sands only, not on upstream, which is extraction and producing from mining or drilling. So other parts of the industry, I have no exposure to so far. So
Yeah.
when I say this thing, like I want to gain more exposure. Where can I get it? I come to school. I get myself like even prepared for all these different changes, and go to a company, and I leverage my experience. Like I'm not running away. I'm not running away, giving up on that industry. I'm leveraging that experience and going back to the same industry with a better tools to be ready for tomorrow. That's something was my pitch in a sense.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So tell me this, right? Because I remember one thing that really stood out to me in working with you is that you never lost your optimism. And I remember one day when I was actually walking through the streets of San Diego and you called my cell phone kind of impromptu and something had happened. I don't know if it was a recommender issue or a job issue or what. And it was just kind of like another problem to overcome on top of your older age and your lower GPA and all that stuff. But you never lost hope. And for me, that's a pretty deep contrast because I know a lot of candidates that I work with, some of whom have better stats than you do, are constantly kind of talking themselves off the cliff, and they're always overly stressed that they're never going to get in. You were really the polar opposite of that, and I loved that about you. So just tell me more about kind of your mindset and your frame of mind going through this process and how you were able to keep yourself so optimistic and positive. Like what were the types of things that you were telling yourself to keep yourself calm through this really stressful admissions process?
I think it is more about like a little bit of personality, I would say, but at the same time, I would say, even in my interviews, I said probably when I talked to you in the beginning, I would say like the first thing someone would remember about me after spending some time is my smile. Like it's life, right? Like things happen. And yes, I remember that when I called you, like yeah, it was a layoff. Like jobs were like I was working through project, so project ends. again, you're looking for another project or job. Sometimes it helps that if it lined up, but not always in the current market. But anyway, so the thing is, losing hope doesn't do any good at all. Like you are in that process of applying. Like if you are talking to some future applicant or new current applicant, I would say that you are already in the process of applying. Talking negative is not going to help in any sense. Rather than make it make it a tool. Yeah, this is happening, and this is why I want to be at the school. Telling yourself will really make you more determined to apply, more determined to work better applications. Because if you are having some trouble here, yeah, life is waiting for you. So why not be ready for it?
Yeah.
That's why I look at this going back to school as being ready for future. Like in a job, someone might be working in consulting. Like yeah, they are making good money. Unless they're trying to check off the box that is required. It's a future investment that we are making.
Yeah.
So be ready for it. Be prepared for it, and enjoy the process. It's fun at the end.
I love it. I love that. No, I think you make a really good point. And I say this to candidates all the time too, that the application process is kind of a great time to do a little soul searching and figure out where you're going and kind of get excited about the future. And I loved that you kept this lens toward, this is really exciting. I'm excited for what's going to happen. I'm excited for the future. And so your enthusiasm, I remember it came through so obviously through your essays, and I'm sure they did in the interview. They certainly did in our practice interviews. But I loved that positivity that you brought to the process, and I have no doubt that it helped overcome any potential issues that the AdCom may have had.
Thanks for the kind words, Ryan. But yeah, it definitely would have helped.
So reflecting back on the application process, what are some things that were surprising to you, or some things that you wish you would have known heading into the process itself?
In terms of application process, like if I have to focus on that area, the very first application, application portal itself, sometimes it takes like 4, 5, 6 hours. You might even have 150, 200 words of mini essays, as I label them later on, like in the application. So I would suggest for new applicants, go through that portal totally before, be prepared, because if you work hard on your essays, you work hard on recommendations, and then you don't want to show up on a portal 2 hours before deadline, and then you realize that you have to write 3 mini essays. That will put a lot of stress at the last moment. So that was one of the first surprise.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. I've seen candidates get tripped up on that.
Yes.
Too, is that they spend all this time in their essays, which they need to do, and then they think they can complete the application form in 20 minutes and realize that there's all these short essay questions.
A lot of them. Second thing is write down something on a paper, I would say, because it's consistency. It's the same information you are typing so many times, so many different locations. Then by mistake, if you change a number somewhere, it might look really bad on your application.
Yeah.
So be very careful, what we are writing, I was employed to September 11 and started new job in October. Okay, as you say, I worked there till October and started in October. It might not matter much materialistically, but it may not look good in terms of how accurately you are putting in your application or how much time you are putting there. Mm-hmm. So those type of things, very small details, in general. Second part is, it's very easy to make up stories when you are thinking about it, essays or why MBA and whatnot. But when it comes to interview and everything, if you don't really have that story that really resonates with you, you might get ripped up. So be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Because it will show through. You might say the story, but when the follow-up question starts through, it will show up. It will show up if you're making up a story or if it matters to you.
Yeah, and I remember trying to prepare you for that. Like I do any candidate, it's easy to fall into the temptation of trying to write the perfect story, but if it's not genuine to you, then it's going to fall apart when you're pushed on it, especially in an interview.
Something what you said a few minutes back, own up whatever story it is yours, but own up.
Own who you are, be who you are. Don't apologize for who you have been and what you want to do, because being a genuine candidate is always going to win the day.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of
Those are the
sense.
things, yeah.
Yeah, great. So I know one thing that we haven't talked about much is your GPA, right? So your GPA was a little bit below average.
Hmm.
So really quickly, how did you address that either through your application or in your interview?
Uh, like GPA was low, but like it also helped that I did my undergrad almost 10 years back. So,
That's true.
yeah, but like you have to talk about it. Like when I was in undergrad, I did a co-op internship. So I worked total 19 months during the school. I also did part-time job while I was in school in library. You also talk about like how involved you were in other activities at the school, and you also show that there was a continuous improvement or not. Like when I had like first winter in Canada, that was one of the big drag on my GPA. Like
Yeah.
very first year, second semester, winter semester, and my GPA went down like quite crazy. So you can show that over the period you improve back. So if you work hard, like it happens, and and the last thing is it's past. You cannot change it. So if you had a bad GPA, show through other things. Like I also went through a course on a Coursera website, finance for non-financial professionals or engineers. So it helps, like that it shows the commitment that you want to learn. And it's yes, GPA is bad. It might affect you a little bit, but at the same time, when you show like you want to learn and you can learn, it becomes just a small number out of many.
I love that. And I think that's really good advice for other candidates who have a lower GPA to pursue that additional coursework through their MBA and things like that. I think that's really smart.
So
So,
if you have time, you can do
so yeah, so overall, how did you differentiate yourself from other candidates? Like what was your kind of pitch to these schools for why they should accept you over other highly qualified candidates?
it is hard because when we don't realize like how many people are other people are out there as accomplished and as competitive as like or even better candidate than you probably if you think about it. And that might be one of the reasons for a lot of anxiety in applicants. But yes, there are a lot of people out there and lot pretty good. So when you come to school, you realize there are a lot of others. But the thing is, like, how do you position yourself? Are
Hmm.
you genuine? Are you ready to help others with your experience? Because in schools, I think what they are looking for is collaborative education. You learn
Yeah.
from each other. Like at Tepper, we have mini semester, 6.5 weeks, we finish 5 courses. What theory do we learn in six
Yeah.
and a half weeks? It's pretty amazing. But if we didn't help each other, if we didn't study together, it's almost impossible. So when you come across as a friendly person, I think that sets you apart quite a bit because everybody is alpha. Like let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And at that time, you might need, in a jokingly, like a little bit, but it'd be a good idea if you place yourself as a beta.
Hmm.
But like and I asked like in particular this school, I asked my interviewer at the end of the interview, how do you see my me fitting in the class? And that person said like she saw me as a collaborator, as a person who would hold the team together. So if you have a strength, play it up to play it up. So school will see a value in that.
Yeah.
That's something will set you apart a little.
Love it. Love it. That's great. Um, good. So final question. What is your advice to candidates trying to get into Tepper? Like, what have you learned about the school so far? I know you've only been there for about a month and a half, but any other advice that you'd have for people that are seeking acceptance to Tepper specifically?
Uh, Campus is a really great school. If you think about it's known as a quantitative school, like along with a few others,
Hmm.
but it's known for a quant heavy. So be ready for a lot of work. But at the same time, like it's also ranked like a top 2 or 3 in operations management. So when you
Yeah.
choose what areas you are looking into, don't just look at like a generalized ranking in quant and quants or somewhere else.
Hmm.
Think about what schools are like exactly matching to your concentration area that you want to choose or pursue. And in particular, Tapper, I would say it's a great location, a lot of rain. Uh, yeah, it's something new for me. But at the same time, we also have a new building, so it is going to bring up ranking or all those things like quite up too. So think about it. Like when you come to Pittsburgh, it's all school says like it's friendly and collaborative, and that's something I felt about Tepper. I visited Tepper 2 years back, and that's when I was pretty much sold on to it.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, what else can I say for specifically for Tepper? Yeah, like it's a phone heavy. Be ready. It's a lot of work. Any MBA school, it's a lot of work. So be ready to work hard.
Yeah. So I know Tepper has kind of, as you mentioned, a reputation for being really operations focused. They're considered really strong in areas of tech. So
Correct.
how important is it for candidates to kind of push their quantitative operations, maybe tech-loving characteristics?
What I was going to say, like, when I will hop back on my last answer. When I said, like, focus on what areas of construction you are choosing, I'm not saying uh, come to Tepper because you want in tech. But I would say, like, if you come to Tepper, you will have a broader exposure in tech and operation. So if, like, I don't want to put in a situation like, if you have tech background, yes, own up to it, but don't try to force it upon yourself or
Yeah.
operations in the same way, because it's known for tech and operation. They have a lot of people coming in. You just don't want to be another person trying to do the same thing. So if it's your field, yes, I'm not saying don't try to suppress it, but don't try to force it upon yourself. So, but
Got
on
it.
the other side, like what you said, like it's also business schools is all about, we are all studying the same thing, like whether I'm going into operations or my classmate going into tech. But try to develop a network before you come in. Like try to understand what you want to do after the school within that area, because
Yeah.
that will help you focus what you will get out of Tepper in 2 years. Time will fly. So if you don't know what you're trying to get out of the school, it will be hard. So again, be honest, like what you want out of the school.
Right.
Soulsearch.
I love that. Yeah, again, I think the admissions process is a great time to do that soul searching. So I feel like a lot of candidates feel like they're just going to land in business school and have all this time to go soul searching. And you just, as you're saying, the academics in the first semester are crazy hard. And then recruitment for summer internships starts really quickly.
Very
So
good.
you have to go in with some type of direction for sure.
Yes. Yes. Like
Hiren, this
particularly
is,
like the IB sector, if you're in investment banking, they
yeah,
already have started interviewing.
they
We
did.
haven't the 6 weeks yet.
Wow. And for those watching this on playback, this is October 2nd.
Yes. Yes.
uh, Great, Hiren. This was awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Really great advice. So great to reconnect with you.
Thanks for the opportunity, and I appreciate. Like I love talking to you again.
You too. You too. Thanks again.
Yeah. Bye bye.